Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics. I am Evan Irwin, and we get started as we do each week saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Salutations.
And Ruben Bressler.
Hello.
Hey,
Aaron
you.
said hi in English this week. I'm confused.
Right.
I'm tapping into our international audience.
We need the Cleon, come on now. Get your batleth on,
I'll look up Elvish for a future episode.
Kapla.
Elvish. So while we get started here, and we're going to get to our spoiler, we're going to get to all the previews, if you will. They're previews.
Official previews.
They're the artists formerly known as spoilers.
Because we're classy.
That's right. And so we have a few things we wanted to quickly touch on while everybody everybody get in here. September 18th is going to be our next Google Hangout for $20 and plus patrons. We had one this previous Sunday. It was lots of fun. We got to talk about our token description stuff. I'm sure we'll find some other topic we can talk about on then. I will not be here on October 12th. There will be no show on October 12th. I'm going to Germany. Should be pretty sweet. Pretty excited about it.
What are you going to do in Germany?
There is the largest gaming convention on the planet, Essen Spiel. Yep. And I will be there as a representative for Cool Stuff Inc., as I'm the marketing manager, and I get to talk to all the cool people in the industry. It's been really fascinating kind of being immersed in that, because I've only kind of dealt in Magic for 5 years. It was just mono Magic. And so now being able to kind of look larger in kind of the hobby market and board games and card games that aren't Magic, and miniatures and like all this stuff that is out there that I really hadn't sort of taken any part in. It's been amazing.
Is this going to be like those Arnold movies, where it was like Arnold goes to jail, Arnold goes to...
Wow. You mean Ernest? Is that what you're talking
there
about?
We go.
The Ernest movies?
Ernest goes to camp. Yeah.
Wow. Ernest goes to
Germany.
Goes to Essen, It's like, hey, y'all, here's a big old booth you got here. All right, so water bottles are here. Check it out. Those are real. Yay. Those are happening. Those are getting shipped out either tomorrow or first thing next week. So if you're a patron, get your address updated. I'm serious, because I can't get it to you if you don't give me your address. And there's people who get all mad at me, and I go look, and they haven't put their address in their account, and what am I supposed to do about it? And then I'm the bad guy. Now, Ruben, can you tell us a little bit about your voice work before we finally get to our preview?
Absolutely. I put a link in the chat. I'm the voice of Leovold of Trest in a Voice of All production. Of Leovold's Dossiers, which was one of the stories that came out on the Mothership a couple weeks ago at this point. And I play Leovold with my super deep voice that sounds like I'm very, very fancy. And so trying to get back into doing more voice work, and I was very, very happy to be able to do that. So maybe in the future I'll do some other characters. But yeah, I definitely take a starring role in this particular episode. So go ahead and check that out.
Isn't it
that's
a little...
also the same.
Go ahead.
That's also the same young man who I did my Olivia voice for. So
yes.
we're all doing work for him.
I'm next, apparently.
Be great.
Y'all need some redneck like Planeswalker.
If we ever need to voice like Grenzo.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Actually, just any gremlin that has a speaking part.
Any gremlin.
The gremlins should just be Cajun.
All right. So
It'd be amazing.
All right. So we've spoken about our announcements. We've given people time to show up, which they have. I think it's preview time now.
I think it's time.
Kaladesh saw its big unveiling this past weekend, and my God, it's been a while since my mind has been blown that much. There was this. We'll get to it, but you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna get to our preview. Our preview here is Angel of Invention. It is a 5-mana angel. It is a 2 white, 3 generic mana mythic angel. It is a 2/1 flying vigilance lifelink, and it has Fabricate of 2, which means when this creature enters the battlefield, you put 2+1/+1 counters on it, or you create 2 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature tokens. Other creatures you control get +1/+1 is its last line of rules text. So it is both a sort of glorious anthem, doesn't pump itself, but it pumps everything else. It's able to enter the battlefield as a 4/3 if you would choose, with flying, vigilance, and lifelink. That's a big deal. Or it's able to put essentially 6 power on the board, because it's able to make itself, and then the 1/1 servo artifact creature tokens are pumped by its ability, so now they're 2/2s. So then you have a 2/1 flyer and a 2/2 and a 2/2, and that's that's sort of, that's good, clean living, as they say. The artwork is by Vulcan Baga. As you can see, it's absolutely amazing because Vulcan is a stone master.
This needs to be cosplayed. Like, it is beautiful.
It is absolutely good. Wow, cosplay of this would be insane. Trying to somehow make them extra arms work.
Extra arms, yeah.
Yeah.
And also, as I've just found out, it's one of the 5 pieces of art on the booster packs.
Nice.
There you go.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel like we get such good cards. We're so fortunate.
Yeah, this card is insanely power. I mean, in terms of just power level, pure power level, it's tough to beat 4 keywords and an anthem.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if everybody out there knows what Kong Ming Sleeping Dragon does. It's a 2/2 from Portal 3 Kingdoms that has the other creatures you control get +1/+1. So for the low cost of a colorless and a toughness, you get 4 keyword abilities.
Right.
And the push and pull on this card is: do you want more creatures or do you want the lifelink? Basically, is really what the payoff on the +1/+1 counters is.
Right. And the way that it's worded, you have to go all in. You're either +1/+, like 2 +1/+1 counters or 2 1/1s. You don't get to split them up.
Split.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to choose one or the other. But I think putting 6 power on the board is pretty fantastic when you're behind, and being able to make a 4/3 evasive lifelinker that doesn't even have to tap to attack is what you want when you're ahead. And so this is one of those good old cards. They're good when you're behind. It's good when you're ahead, which to me says it's very good. However, it is battling with another certain mythic angel in standard.
Right. Which is the problem.
Avacyn. Yeah.
Now, to be fair, Evan, you have a history of getting spoiler cards that aren't good until the set previous rotates.
This is true. I did get Desecration Demon, for example.
Yep.
And that one had to, like, Lingering Souls had to get out. And then once Lingering Souls left, man, that card was ridiculous.
Yeah, so this could be another one of those. I mean, but the other flip side of that is that, there's always going to be 5-mana white mythics, like there just is, that this thing's going to fight with. But I'm a huge fan of an anthem. Boy, let me tell you. Getting a preview card, like we saw this preview card before we knew that servos were going to be a thing.
Yeah,
so
we
it's
couldn't
just
say
like,
anything.
oh my God, there are servos.
Yes.
What the hell is happening?
Yeah.
That's a weird creature type, but okay. But yeah, so we got to see that, and this is a pretty cool preview card. I'm really excited about this one.
Nice. Aaron?
Yeah, I like this. I think that, it fits into the, we spent a lot of the pre-show talking about get you a girl who can do both. And we'll talk about some of the cards later on that we feel encompass that. But this card really does that. You can put it in sort of the white weenie strategies with like always watching, and you can sort of go wide. But we've also seen some big white happening in standard, white mid-range. And so, having a possibly 4/3 body with lifelink and flying and vigilance is not bad. Just ask Gisela.
Right.
4/3 flying, first strike, lifelink. Those are not bad stats to have. And so, if you are looking to go wide and have an anthem, she can do that for you. If you are looking to just sort of go mid-range, she can do that as well and provide you with an anthem. It's just a really versatile card, and cards that give you choices. Ishkama's play right now, for the 4,
right.
For that effect and the tokens. And so I think this card's definitely going to see standard play. The art's fantastic. I just think it's a home run.
It is it is a super sweet card. Yeah, and there's I've gotten plenty of playable cards that are playable immediately. For example, Sylvan Advocate,
Well, sure.
Which was terrific, and remains terrific, honestly.
Yeah, of course.
But so that was unbelievable.
And this is specifically they gave you because it's 3 dudes seriously. This was a troll. Directed at you.
I will say the best part of this card though was the servo surprise, because we knew about servos. I think we were one of the few that knew about them before everybody else. And I remember watching the initial Kaladesh coverage, and when the art got spoiled, people were so excited, and it was really great to see that and be like, you guys are gonna love this, and we couldn't say anything. So not only could we not say anything about our card, which is awesome, but we knew, and Fabricate, we knew about Fabricate before Morrow revealed it, and so part of the enjoyment was also seeing people enjoy the mechanics the way that we did when we first found out.
Yep. And so, you know what? Even if this is just a gigantic troll to give me a spell so I can say 3 dudes seriously, I'm okay with that.
It's great.
I'm okay with
Absolutely.
I was always of the opinion that Desecration Demon was a troll card for you too, because it taps itself so you don't have to.
Right.
No, there's so many opportunities for those. So
Desecration Demon, when Desecration Demon was standard legal, that was the last time that season or that block. That was the last time I can say that I truly enjoyed standard. I'm just saying.
You mean the mono black control stuff?
No, it was a Desecration Demon. I played it back when Innistrad was standard legal, so it was Thragtusk, Desecration Demon, Disciple of Bolus,
Yep, I remember that
Mutilate. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I have yet to enjoy a standard as much as I enjoyed that time. Like Abzan Reanimator was a thing, Jund was a thing with Rakdos Keyrune, I think it was. Those were the days, man.
You just need green black do nothing decks in standard with
people were winning. Esper was winning with Nephalia Frownyard. Those were the days.
Wow. Yeah. All right. So we got to talk about Kaladesh now. Wizards, I think you could definitely tell that they went all out. Like when Trick was like, we've almost been playing, we've been playing this for almost a year. I totally believed it.
Yeah.
Because they had every part of it. They had an opening ceremony, and they had all these cool announcements. They had this amazing program where they would kind of bring people out to talk about the story, to talk about the design. It was fantastic. Jimmy Wong, way better host than Will Wheaton.
Can I just make a point though?
It's not close.
I was really happy to see, and this is a little thing, I was really happy to see that the Saheeli cosplayer was a woman of color. Because when they first showed the silhouette, I was like, oh no, oh no. Like, I kept hearing Beyonce in my head with like, you better call Becky with the cosplay. I'm like, oh no, oh no. And then the light lifted, and I was like, oh, thank God. Like, I was just so worried there's going to be some, So.
And she looked amazing.
She was great.
She was fan-freaking-tastic. So Wizards comes out, and I'll keep the spoilers off the screen for the moment. So the Wizards comes out, and they bust out vehicles. Now, vehicles, oh my God, vehicles kind of blow my mind. Vehicles are insane. I never thought I would be talking about magic cars, like literally magic cars.
Well, I mean, there's Goblin War Buggy.
Yeah.
There's like occasional little, Calvin and Hobbes style wagons.
Right, there's wagons, but there's never been cars. There's never been
there's runaway carriage or whatever.
Actual,
no, not cars.
Get your crew on. And the other thing was, I know, right? The first thing I saw that I had actually misread. I misread crew. I thought you tapped that many creatures.
Right.
Yeah.
But so let's back up a little bit now. For those who are curious or wanting us to kind of explain it, vehicles are a new card type in Magic. They are artifacts which turn into artifact creatures once you use their crew effect. So they are artifact-vehicles. The first one spoiled, for example, as I find it here, was Oval Chase Dragster. It's a 4 generic mana, 6/1 uncommon artifact vehicle. It has trample and haste and crew of 1. You tap any number of creatures you control with total power of 1 or more. This vehicle becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. So it is a little confusing in that when you play it, it's not a creature. It doesn't turn into a creature until you crew it. So thematically, I think it works, but I think visually there's definitely a possibility for confusion. Yes. But when you're looking at a card that kind of wants to do an impression of Ball Lightning, which is kind of the original 6/1 trample haste guy, I think you could. I think these cards are really sweet. They kind of let you do something with your smaller creatures, so they can all kind of team up to do crewing together, as it were. I mean, they went through, like another one, for example, and I'll hand it off to you guys after this one, is Sky Skiff, which is a 2 generic mana, 2/3 common vehicle that has flying and crew of 1. So this allows Wizards, R&D to give us 2 mana, 2/3 flyers, but it's going to take a little something to do there. But you're able to tap any number of creatures, whether or not they're summoning sick, for example. And I love how it kind of ramps up, and we'll talk about some other vehicles, but regardless, the ability to do that based on power gives the developers just another important knob that they can turn and use to make sure that the cards kind of make sense and aren't really overpowered. And who knows, maybe this is kind of an equipment situation where when equipment first debuted in Mirrodin, it was way too good. They ain't ever making a Bone Splitter ever again. So if they're going to screw up on vehicles, this is the set where they're going to screw up on vehicles. It just kind of is the way it is. What do you guys think?
Listen, now,
Wow. Did you start me with a listen?
I could have started with a look, but I didn't. So when they first revealed Anka-Cat or Ankh-Mon? Amonkhet. There we go. You know, you've been playing World of Warcraft for too long when you start naming things Anka-Cat because you think, yeah, whatever. But anyways, when that set was first spoiled, I was thinking, oh my god, I can get a Bazaar of Baghdad reprint. This is the set. I can get this in. This is possible. And then all of a sudden, people sent me a tweet the other day, and they were like, hey girl, they listened to you. Here's your Bazaar reprint. And all I saw was the image of the barge, and I was like, oh my god, is it gonna have like a bizarre effect? Is that what I'm in for? And so I clicked the link excitedly, and no, it was just some vehicle with alliteration. So that was not cool. So
the proper pronunciation of that card is Bomat Bazaar Barge.
Yeah, you know what the proper pronunciation of that card is? We're a family show. Sorry, but
we're a family show. That's the proper. You know, if you're a patron of the show, you have the pre-show. Maybe she said it there. But for those who are curious, there is a Bazaar in the set. It is Bombat Bazaar Barge. It is a 4 generic mana, 5/5 uncommon vehicle. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. That's pretty sweet. And it crews for 3. So you tap 3 power worth of creatures, and all of a sudden it's a 5/5. So for 4 mana, which is, you know, pretty sweet rate. And I think what you saw in a lot of these vehicles was like you're getting a bonus, and even like sort of to the extreme, which is really interesting to me as an uncommon. There's Demolition Stomper. It is a 6 generic mana 10/7 uncommon vehicle. Can't be blocked by creatures with a power 2 or less, but it crews for 5. So you kind of get a 2-for-1 ratio back on whatever you're kind of crewing. So tell us, Ruben, where are you out on vehicles right now?
I have many thoughts. Some of them are about vehicles.
So many thoughts. Just
the first thing that confused me, I will admit that I didn't realize the type line is artifact-vehicle.
Right.
It doesn't say creature and has power and toughness. So if you think back to, like, for example, the Theros gods are technically creatures, but they aren't turned on all the time unless you have devotion.
Right.
This is very similar. You need to turn them on, but they have a different type line kind of setup, and so that was confusing to me. You know, it's just sort of a bunch of, you know, it's like word salad. Like I didn't know what to do with new vehicles when I first saw the cards.
But wouldn't we have the same problem if they, like, because the gods had to, like, their first line had to say, you know, is not a creature unless you have devotion 1. This would have to say, you know, blah 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 is not a creature unless you have crewed this artifact or something.
And flavorfully, from a, you know, like a remove soul perspective, it doesn't make sense to remove soul from a vehicle, but it does make sense because gods are sentients that you can do that. Whatever, I'm getting too much into the psychoanalysis of how counterspells work, I guess. But I will say that I like vehicles. I like how they're doing them. You know, the Sky Sovereign console cruise ship is the big flashy one for the set.
Yeah.
It basically does an Inferno Titan effect when it enters the battlefield or attacks. It's pretty insane. But I think, honestly, the best one for Standard that I'm most excited for is Fleet Wheel Cruiser. There's a card from way long time ago called Skizik. You're familiar with Skizik?
It's Onslaught block, isn't it?
I'm familiar with Skithiris.
Or Invasion, okay.
I think it's Invasion. That was a 5/3 haste trample creature that you could pay an extra mana as a kicker to keep it around. Otherwise, you had to, you know, sacrifice it, I think. And Fleet Wheel Cruiser turns itself on the turn it comes into play, so you don't need to have any previous setup to attack with your Fleet Wheel Cruiser the first turn, and then it requires Crew 2. That's the most exciting card of the vehicles so far for me. But the last thing I wanted to say is I'm really not a fan of the borders that they gave to the vehicles. Like,
it's very weird... Bob the Builder.
Disagree.
Yeah, okay. Well, okay. I just don't. I don't like the whole, I don't know, bars and.
Are you trying to say that's fine? And that you get that?
I'm willing to be wrong because I haven't held a physical copy of one in my hand.
Sure.
Well, for example, I wasn't a big fan when they changed the artifacts from being brown to gray. I wasn't a big fan of that either. But now I can't imagine artifacts going back ever. And so, you know, I'm willing to be swayed on this issue, but not right now. I'm not a fan.
And funnily enough, these artifacts do have a brown border.
Yes, they do. These are finally we have brown bordered artifacts back. Sort of. We got like gray striped things happening. I just don't know if I like.
Fleet Wheel Cruiser.
Oh my god, we agree on something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, high five.
Fleet Wheel Cruiser is super sweet. 4 mana for a 5/3 trample haste that doesn't sacrifice itself at the end of turn, that in fact turns itself on as a vehicle. You can use, for example, Gideon's Token to turn it back on the next turn. That's something I've already kind of heard about. For those who are curious, the mythic vehicle is Sky Sovereign Console Flagship. It's a 5 generic mana.
That is a mouthful.
It's a lot. It's a 5 generic mana, 6/5 mythic legendary vehicle. It has flying. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, it deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls, and it crews for 3. So it's really interesting to see kind of there does kind of seem to be a 2-for-1. You tap 1 power to get an additional power in terms of how much it takes to crew something. Right. And there's some parts where they differ that, but the fact that we have a card called Start Your Engines is amazing. Speedway Fanatic gives a vehicle haste, whichever vehicle
it crews a vehicle,
which is fan-freaking-tastic. So we have some really amazingly flavorful cards, and it's something we talked about in the pre-show that's in the Custom Magic subreddit. Call out to the Custom Magic subreddit, which is awesome. If there is a threaten, red has threaten abilities. This is where they temporarily steal your creatures, and they get to untap with them. They have haste, so on and so forth.
Right.
If there is a threaten for vehicles, it has to be called Hotwire.
Yeah.
Hotwire is the card that you take their vehicle, you untap it, you activate it, like maybe it gives it +1/+1 or something, and it's totally sweet. And it's so silly and narrow. It's beautiful.
And then you do your best Nicolas Cage impression as you attack them with it. Yeah. It's pretty good. I mean, I'm sure we'll get to Depala here in a second, but I also wanted to touch on Sky Skiff.
Yeah, we talked about it here a few minutes ago. I mentioned it.
Yeah, but specifically Sky Skiff is exciting to me because I think that this is the one that's most likely to see modern play. It's theoretically possible to see play in Affinity. It can be crewed by a Memnite. It can be crewed by it can't be crewed by a Signal Pest or an Ornithopter. But it's very exciting to me to have that card in a deck with something like Steel Overseer. That's a pretty interesting possible application for Sky Skiff.
Wow, that's slipping into a.
Hey,
deck.
It's worth testing. I mean,
it's worth looking at. I love it. I think it's really exciting. But so now Wizards was just they were just nonstop. It was unbelievable. So before we move off vehicles, I think we have to talk about sort of one of the vehicle lords is a thing, but I really also lets us introduce the race back into Magic, which is dwarfs.
Right.
There have been no dwarves in a very long time, and we have a legendary dwarf who is a dwarf lord, and that's amazing. Depala, Pilot Exemplar, is a white, red, and a generic mana 3/3 rare legendary dwarf pilot. Other dwarves you control get +1/+1. Each vehicle you control gets +1/+1 as long as it's a creature. And whenever it becomes tapped, like when you're crewing something, you may pay X generic mana. If you do, you reveal the top X cards from your library, put all dwarf and vehicle cards from among them into your hand, then put the rest of them on the bottom of your library in a random order. So that's not just pick one, that's everyone.
All. Yeah.
That's all. That's a lot. And
it's already a 3 mana 3/3 in the Boros colors. Like, it's already a card that you would just consider with no rules text.
Yeah. That whole paragraph at the bottom, seriously, not necessary to make that card exciting or interesting. But they're like, you know what? Screw it. Balls to the walls.
Why not?
Happen. So, awesome. Let's go, Wizards. Come on, baby. Let's do this. Get out of my dreams.
The card's
Get
amazing.
into my car. You know what I'm saying?
Dear Lord.
Yes.
Can't stand you.
Oh, God.
Oh. Get out of my dreams, y'all. Get on to my battlefield. You know what I'm saying?
Now, one thing that also upset me was that vehicles isn't a creature type, so you don't have self-driving cars on your changelings. But I will say that the wording that they needed to put on Depala of each vehicle gets +1/+1 as long as it's a creature is really unwieldy. you can look at this set, and so many cards don't have flavor text that it's kind of staggering how many words there just are. I would be interested to know what the most words total in a set is.
Well, it's especially noticeable because Maro just released his State of the Design for 2016 the other day, and I understand that this set's probably been in design for a while, so he probably came to the conclusions for 2016 only recently, and this has already been in the running, and so he can't go back and change it. But, you know, a big part of his State of Design was that, you know, there were too many mechanics and there were too many keywords and things like that, and it was a really good article, and people were like, we agree. Like, for the most part, the community really agreed with his criticisms. And then the set comes out, and you've got vehicles and crews and tapping and energy and a separate chart for the energy, and people were like, wait a minute, girl, you just wrote this whole thesis the other day about how this was all unwieldy and too bad for beginners and all this stuff, and then all this stuff is being rained down upon us, and there is sort of a disconnect there of you acknowledge that part of what didn't work with these previous sets was this, and now we're getting a big, you know, spoonful of more. It just seems kind of strange.
So the devil's advocate for that argument is that we've only seen a very small portion of the set.
Sure.
And we would be seeing some of the more complicated, intricate cards because we're the enfranchised players who really care about that. We're on literally every second. You know, we're on the Magic TCG subreddit multiple times a day, checking all the spoilers, talking about it, so on and so forth. So that to me is the other side of that argument, is that maybe on the aggregate it's not so bad, but we're certainly seeing the wordiest of the words here. So let's move on to what you'd mentioned, which was energy. We have an entirely different resource in Magic. That's a big deal. That's almost like a sixth color. It's very close.
It's pretty close.
It is incredibly close. Now, it gives Wizards. Now, I don't know if they're going to use energy moving forward, but I wouldn't be surprised because there's only, you know, so many ways you can kind of tweak the cost of cards. There's only so many different levers and pulleys and, you know, and kind of gears and knobs that developers have to turn. But the ability to add energy to things or to have energy pay for things gives them just another aspect to make it, you know, balanced, to make it interesting, or to make the gameplay better. I believe it was, I couldn't remember exactly when, maybe it was one of the interviews with Mark Rosewater where he was talking about Eric Lauer had said at one point in design, can we just double all the energy costs? Because the energy right now is too unwieldy to balance and work with and develop because one energy does so much. So they made everything cost double. And that's why we see some activations which look kind of silly where they require 6 and 8 energy. But at the same time, that allows your 2 energy abilities and 3 energy abilities to be really interesting and really sort of powered in a way that works, I guess is the way to say it. So let's talk about the first energy card that was spoiled. And I love this because, man, Mark Rosewater was just on. When he was there in front of the crowd.
Ruben, you have to do it.
Oh, my God.
Which card are we talking about?
Aetherworks Marvel.
Gotta find it. Hold on.
It's next to Saheeli Rai and the.
It's at the bottom there.
Yes, near the bottom. Yeah.
Aetherworks Marvel. So I've been trying to put this into the set for 11 years since Mirrodin, and we finally found a place for it. Aetherworks Marvel. He's a 4-cost. I'm looking off to the side. That's just something I do now.
He was on like 15 when that card was debuted.
He was ready to be talking about energy. I've been waiting for 11 years. That's almost as long as I've been talking. Okay. Whenever a permanent you control is put into a graveyard, you get an energy symbol. This is the new ability for this set. And if you tap and pay 6 energy, you look at the okay, etc., etc.
All right,
look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may cast a card from among them without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This is the one that spoiled, officially previewed energy. And it's a pretty sweet card. I mean, getting a permanent into your graveyard is super easy.
Right, and it's able to do that multiple times. Now, I think it's more of a Johnny card. You know what I mean?
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
I think it's made to do silly, fun things with.
Yes.
But ultimately, Aetherworks Marvel is a 4 generic mana mythic legendary artifact. Whenever a permanent you control is put into a graveyard, you get an energy counter. Those energy counters are sort of like mana, but they never go away. Nothing gets rid of them. You keep them from turn to turn. You can keep them for the entire game. You don't have to spend them if you don't want to. But now there's certain cards that have energy payment activated abilities, such as this one on Aetherworks Marvel, which says tap. pay 6 energy. Look at the top 6 cards from your library. You may cast a card from among them without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So being able to play any card for free, big deal. Being able to try to stack your deck, super fun. Given an entirely different resource is just, I can only imagine the high fives that went around the developers table when they were like, we have a totally different resource to make sure, to balance things. We're like, yes! Now we get to have these cool energy decks, and we get to see what they can do with them, and the type of scales and how much energy does what. I can only imagine the absolute fun they had there. Was just unbelievable. So Aaron, how are you feeling about energy at this point?
It's okay. I do like that it is inspiring people to want to go after the Pokemon energy cards.
Yes, that's awesome.
There has been an increased demand for those. I saw Tom Ross earlier had a fan full of them. I know Emma Handy was looking for them, and so that's really cool. I think it's something that we are kind of underrating. Like, I think people are kind of underestimating it. I see that there's some potential here for some broken things. Like, even the Aetherworks Marvel, it's like, as somebody who likes putting permanents in your graveyard, it's not hard to do. And so especially if you were to, we had seen like a Cryptolith Rights kind of thing in Standard for a little while with like, Nantuko Husk and other aristocrat type things. And if you really wanted to start chaining things and start sacrificing things, and I believe that deck even had Emrakul or Ulamog at one point. And so if you just start sacrificing things and at the same time you're getting all these triggers, you can make some energy, then you spend that energy, you could maybe pop out an Ulamog, and there's all sorts of craziness there. I think it's something, like I said, I think we're going to see a lot of this, and I'm not quite sure how, but I see some potential here.
I definitely see some red-green aggro stuff that I'll talk about here in a second.
Yeah.
But Ruben, tell me how you're sort of feeling about energy at this point.
Well, red-green aggro, right up my alley. A lot of the cards that deal with energy obviously are going to be in red. That's the color whose theme is fire and expulsion of energy, really. And surprisingly for me, at least a little bit, is green. That we're looking at the spoilers for Kaladesh, and there's a lot of technological advancement happening of various sizes, and people are driving vehicles, and people have these cool steampunk backpacks, and various devices. But green is the color that's always sort of been the going back to nature kind of thing. And I really like the way that they've themed green for Kaladesh, which is, the ether exists. It doesn't need machines in order to flow. It doesn't need technological advancement in order to thrive. And so you get a card like Architect of the Untamed, 2/3 for 3, already passes the Blind Phantasm test. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, you get an energy. Pay 8 energy, and you get a 6/6. That's pretty cool.
Well, I also think from a Vorthos standpoint, I think part of the reason that, you brought up a really good point, Ruben, about green sort of embracing technology. And I think it's coming not at the expense of life. I think when we talked about it from when we went to Ravnica, it was always very clear that the city was advancing at the expense of the land, at the expense of the wilderness, at the expense of creatures. But it feels like in Kaladesh, the technology can improve and people can innovate without necessarily destroying forests, without necessarily ruining ecosystems or infringing on animals. And that's why, that might be part of the reason why the elves are on board with this time, is because they're not screwing with nature to get it done. You can move forward and everybody wins, everybody thrives.
So
ether's the wind energy of Kaladesh. It's a renewable resource.
So we're about 35 minutes in almost. We haven't spoken one word about planeswalkers.
Yeah.
Not a word. Now, Saheeli Rai.
You mean Saheeli Y?
Yeah, I know, right? Saheeli,
fine, man.
Saheeli, All right, so Saheeli Rai is an Izzet, or an Izzet planeswalker. Forgive me, all you Izzet players.
Wouldn't it be fabulous if there was like a girl group called the Izzets, which is like the big hair and like.
I've always said Izzet, and I know it's been wrong, and I never hear the end of it when I do. Anyway, Saheeli Rai is a red, blue, and a generic mana mythic planeswalker with 3 loyalty. So all of a sudden you're checking the boxes. 3 mana, 3 loyalty, has a sweet +1. +1 is pretty underpowered because it really can't be overpowered.
Right.
because this is a turn 3 planeswalker. So +1, scry 1, she deals 1 damage to each opponent. -2, create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature you control, except that it's an artifact in addition to its other types. That token gains haste, and you exile it at the beginning of the next end step. So it doesn't really protect itself as much as probably make something sweet happen.
Well, no, I mean, you can protect yourself.
But let's get to the final ability. Her ultimate is -7. Search your library for up to 3 artifact cards with different names and put them onto the battlefield and shuffle your library. So, Ruben, tell me.
I'm just saying that the -2 actually kind of does protect itself, right? Because you have your 2-drop in play, whatever it may be, just pretend it's a 2/2, right? Mm-hmm. So you create a token, and now you get to attack with the token instead of having to send your real copy of the creature into the red zone. So you still get to have your cake and eat it too. So you can attack with the copy, or if you happen to have a come into play ability or a creature with vigilance, you actually get more value out of it. It doesn't protect itself as efficiently, certainly as pretty much every other planeswalker. But the dealing 1 damage to each opponent is able to sort of keep opposing planeswalkers in check. The -2 is able to put pressure on opponents without having to sacrifice either your tempo or whatever creatures you have in play. The ultimate's not relevant, obviously, but to be a 3-mana planeswalker, you can't be too pushed. On a scale of Tybalt to Liliana of the Veil, it's like obviously not in either direction. It's probably weaker than Liliana the Last Hope as well. But being in blue-red gives it some unique opportunities as well. Being able to fix your draw step in something like a Thermo Alchemist deck. We don't know what creating the token is going to do. We don't know what kind of copy effects there are going to be, what relevant artifact things there are going to be in this set, or all of them at least. So I think that there's a lot of good that can happen with Saheeli Rai. It just requires more setup.
Aaron? All right. That's a head shake for those listening.
I think that my sort of pun on her name, Saheeli Y. Like, I mean, I feel like there was such a build up for the character, and it does feel I was a little disappointed. I kind of put her in the same category as Ral Zarek. It's like people were so excited to have an Is It Planeswalker, and it kind of fizzled. And I feel like she's sort of keeping up that Is It Planeswalker legacy of. She's cute, but...
Well, and the last thing I'll note is that Dak Faden is a card. Dak Faden has seen Vintage play.
Okay.
I could see Saheeli in Vintage because they run very few creatures. They run very few answers. She +1s immediately, which puts her to 4 loyalty, which is a big deal. Copies artifacts, which are very important in Legacy. In Vintage. So, this is the type of card that's like that weird sort of niche-y. It does just exactly what those Vintage-type players want it to do in those decks.
I can see that, yeah.
But the problem is you got Dak Faden.
Right, and Dak Faden is generally, in terms of like what you want to do and whatnot.
Right.
So let's keep moving to Baby's first Planeswalker. These are the 2 intro decks, the Planeswalker decks that are now going to accompany all the sets. Now, first of all...
These will not appear in packs.
These will not appear in packs in any way. They are standard legal, but they're not going to appear in packs. Now, here's the cool thing about it, and I think Wizards did a great job for this, because the ability to have a really cool-looking character, to have a deck that's built for that character, that has things that tutor for the Planeswalker that you see on the front, that's all super sweet-looking, like, that's awesome. Wizards did a great thing. I hated intro decks. I've never liked them, and I think they did a great job here. But there's 2 Planeswalkers. They're supposed to be bad. They're bad. Ruben? I'm sorry.
Okay.
They're bad. But,
all right.
But you know what? I won't go over Chandra Power Genius. I'll let you guys kind of find that out for yourselves, so we got lots to cover here. But Nissa Nature's Artisan, we had a short conversation about. It's a 2-green, 4 generic mana, 5 loyalty, mythic Planeswalker. Yeah. She +3s to gain 3 life, so she'll go up to 8 loyalty. She -4s to go to 1 loyalty to reveal the top 2 cards of your library. You put all lands from them onto the battlefield and the rest into your hand, so she basically draws 2. It's not bad. -12, creatures you control get +5/+5 and get trampled until end of turn, so she's like a super overrun. So, Ruben, tell me, what about this appeals to you in some fashion?
Right, so, during the pre-show, I was like, look, there are meta games where all you need in your, janky, slow, green-based ramp deck, where you just need to gain some life later in the game, and hopefully you can get some card advantage out of it too. We saw Nissa's Renewal, for example, as a 6-mana sorcery, gaining life and getting lands out of players' decks in the Seasons Past deck that Team Pantheon played. This is somewhat similar. I could imagine, it would take a very specific metagame, but if like the blue-green part the Water Veil ramp kind of deck needed a thing to do, needed a way to gain incremental life. It goes up to 8, Evan. 8 is a high number.
8 is a very high number, but what can you do with it?
You can gain 3 life every turn.
And you can draw 2 cards with it, which is cool.
Sure.
I'm not saying that's bad.
It's also not, obviously it's not as good as actual Nissa, like that you'll open in packs, and Chandra is not going to be nearly as good as actual Chandra that you'll open in packs, which I'm sure we'll talk about next. But I think that there are certain metagames where 6-mana Nissa is better than 5-mana Nissa in certain matchups. I'm not saying it's going to be a standard all-star. I'm not saying...
You are crazy. So let's talk about the new Nissa, okay? Let's compare and contrast, all right? So the new Nissa, which Wizards gave to Gathering Magic. Thank you very much, Wizards. I appreciate that. Gathering Magic got to spoil this one. Nissa Vital Force. 2 green, 3 generic mana for a 5 loyalty mythic planeswalker. Her +1 will untap target land you control until your next turn. It becomes a 5/5 elemental creature with haste. That's still a land. -3, you return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. And -6, you get an emblem with whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. So for those who are listening, you can't really visualize it. You can't see the card. Let's be real clear. It's a 5-mana, 5 loyalty walker that has a +1 that protects herself, and her ultimate is 6. So she ultimates in 1 turn. If Oath of Gideon exists, which I'm guessing it will in the Naya Super Friends deck, then she's going to come in with an extra loyalty counter, meaning she can literally immediately ultimate, which is ridiculous. Because being able to play a land, draw a card, it's every mid-range to control player's dream. That's what they want. They love that. That's amazing. And if you draw one in the future, okay, 2 emblems is pretty sweet. It is a May. You're not going to necessarily deck yourself with them, which is nice. But even if you just want to use it as kind of a regrowth and then be able to make 5/5s to smash in, this card is fantastic.
It also pairs really well with her own card, Nissa's Renewal from Battle of Zendikar. You can, which also saw play in the Seasons Past deck. 5 and a green, sorcery, search your library for up to 3 basic lands, put them on the battlefield tapped. Oh, gain 7 life and draw 3 cards. And where do I sign up?
Right, so you build your own Sphinx's Revelation.
Yeah.
In a deck that kind of already has its own Sphinx's Revelation in Seasons Past. I will say, Evan, if you're playing against a mono-red deck, like you will when this set comes out against me, because
not green-red? Really?
No. Probably. I mean, who knows? Anything is possible. But which Nissa would you rather have in that situation?
Not a 6-drop? Are you kidding? Against mono-red? What?
I mean, I wouldn't really want either, but
I wouldn't either. But you're like, you want the 6-drop, right? Against the aggro deck?
I'm just saying that there are
what?
But yeah, Nissa Vital Force is a beating. That card's really good. Being able to get to ultimate the turn you play it. Not only that, but or the turn after you play it, but also being able to protect itself with the 5/5 on the same turn.
That's a large body.
That's a big deal. Having the basically Cough of the Hammer effect. Yeah. But in green, which is a lot better at getting out lands that are sort of expendable, so you can toss them into the red zone willy-nilly. That's a big deal.
And once you have that emblem to be able to play, Nissa's Renewal or the Find 2 Forests one, I can't remember. That's Nissa's Pilgrimage, I think. Either of those cards, you're putting 2 forests into play. You're drawing 2 cards. Like that card suddenly becomes Divination plus 2 lands. Like
it turns all your ramp spells into card draw spells, which is insane.
Yeah. Card is fantastic. Aaron, do you have any thoughts on Nissa before we move on?
No, I do like Nissa Vital Force, though, and I think it's fun. I like everything about it, and if I had to pick a Nissa, I'd want Vital Force every time. Sorry, Ruben.
That's fine.
Which one do you want against mono red?
Hey,
you're killing me. All right.
I'm just being open-minded, unlike you sheltered people who don't consider anything other than your preconceived notions.
Let me give you a preconceived notion, which is Wizards made themselves another Mind Sculptor. Chandra, Torch of Defiance is unbelievable. 2 red, 2 generic mana for a 4 loyalty mythic planeswalker. She has 4 abilities, which has only been done 2 other times with Garruk Apex Predator and Jace the Mind Sculptor. Of course, there have been planeswalkers with more abilities, but they had to flip, for example, for them to do so. She has 2 +1 abilities and then some minus abilities. Her first +1 exiles the top card of your library. You may cast that card. You still have to pay its mana cost. It doesn't say that, but you do. If you don't, she deals 2 damage to each opponent. So let's say you played a mountain already, and you +1, you showed a mountain. Whatever, they just take 2. Her other +1 is to add 2 red to your mana pool. So if you're able to get her out on turn 3, let's say with some acceleration, and then on your turn 4, you're able to have 7 mana. And that's amazing. Yeah. So, and that's putting her to 5 loyalty.
Yeah, right.
Oh my God, this card's so good. But you could argue that her +1 to add 2 red is also the ability to give you mana to play a creature, which will protect her. That's an argument I could see happening. However, she also comes in with a creature removal ability to -3 to deal 4 damage to target creature. That would leave her with 1 loyalty, just for those keeping track at home. And finally, -7. You get an emblem with whenever you cast a spell, this emblem deals 5 damage to target creature or player. Basically, the good old-fashioned I win the game. Note that it can happen in a short 3 turns. So this girl slices and dices, and Julianne fries. Now, one of the things that is, I mean, this card is. Let's be clear, this card is incredibly good. It's one of the best planeswalkers I've ever seen, just in terms of just like how it reads in a very long time. This card is bananas. Like, it's the Stone Cold Nutter Butters, people. This is the part where you get to go, I was there when the thing was first, blah, blah, blah.
Get carried away.
It's good. But here's how good it is.
Very good.
Here's how good it is, okay? And here's why I want to bring up this point to kind of let you guys riff on it, is something that Matt Sperling brought up. Now, Matt Sperling, Lord knows, he comes up with some crazy ideas, and this I thought was really interesting, was that, is it good for Magic to have a planeswalker who, if you're playing that color, you more or less have to play that planeswalker. Now, one of the reasons that Jace was a problem, Jace the Mind Sculptor was an issue, was you could not play a deck with blue mana in it and not play Jace, because there's just no good reason to not do so. Are we entering an era where if you're playing red and you're not playing this Chandra, what are you doing? Like, maybe Mono Red Aggro has that argument, but any other red deck, whether it's Ramp, whether it's some sort of control, Grixis, whatever, even the red-white decks that have all the vehicles and whatnot, the dwarf decks that we'll see, I'm sure, like, they could use a Chandra. Everybody could use a Chandra.
I mean, to be fair, we're in a similar spot right now with Gideon Ally of Zendikar and white, right? Like, if you're playing white, even if you're the 17 lands white weenie deck, you still have Gideons in your sideboard. So if I'm playing 17 land, mono red aggro, I'm probably still at least running Chandras in my sideboard. The point is completely valid. I get that it's it's insanely powerful when you get compared to Jace the Mind Sculptor. Even if it's unfavorably, which, by the way, this is no Jace the Mind Sculptor.
This is not Jace the Mind Sculptor, but it is very good.
It's very good, but it's not a win condition wrapped up in a card that prevents your opponent from finding answers to it. So it's not. I don't think it's on the same level, but it's extremely good. I think that very rarely does the pre-order hype live up to the actual expectation. I think that this has a possibility of doing so. And also, I wanted to point out that the best play that you can make with this new Chandra is also the most flavorful one that you can make with this new Chandra, which is play Chandra Torch of Defiance, +2, play Oath of Chandra, kill your creature, deal you 2 damage.
Well, +1, but yes, absolutely.
+1, whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. But Oath of Chandra and Chandra Torch of Defiance just makes me the happiest.
Right.
I think it's fine. I think it's fine as she's sort of pushed. I think she could even see modern play. I think that we might have talked about this once before, but I think it's important for the prominent characters of a block to be good. When Shadows over Innistrad first came out, if Avacyn would have been bad, I really think that would have lessened the impact of the set, and Avacyn turned out to be a fantastic card.
Right.
Nahiri also turned out to be a great card. She hasn't seen as much play as I think some of us would like to, but she found a home in Modern. She single-handedly made Control a thing in Modern again, which people had struggled to do. Right. And so I think it's very important that if this set's going to be Chandra's Homecoming, if this is going to be sort of the her and Liliana Galpal set, it's very important for Chandra to be good. And let's be honest, Chandra has not been good for a while. The Battle for Zendikar version, or the the Oath of the Gatewatch version, she's good. But for a while there, they'd always been relegated to like one of sideboard ofs. We really haven't had a good Chandra, a great Chandra, and I really feel like this is sort of her time, and she is the prominent figure of this set, and I think let her have her time. I think it's great.
Right, and I think, ultimately, there have been good Chandras. There have been Chandras that have seen top 8 play in legacy decks or, standard. It's happened. And her previous iteration was okay, but this is the first one where you're like, holy cow.
Yeah.
They were not messing around. And Wizards has already done this. They've already made cards that should have been good, but they didn't make them good. It's called the Weatherlight Saga. If you want to check out, Gerard Capuchin for some letdowns, you'll find a free letdown there. You'll be like, that seems really sad. And it is. And so you take these people who supposed to be the Han Solo of Magic, and you're just like, what? It's a weird 5-mana dude. It's terrible. So they know, and it's something that's I think puts a lot of pressure on R&D, because you want to make it good, but you can't make it too good. And that I can only imagine the struggles they go through over and over again trying to playtest these things and tweak and change and look. And, if we just gave it another loyalty, how much more exciting would that be? If it just dealt one more damage, if it just did X, just did Y, if it just +2 instead of +1, so on and so forth, which I think is really interesting. So we're kind of running out of time.
Yeah, we could talk about spoilers for the rest of the show.
Right.
But it's a good problem to have, that we like a set this much, that we're talking about it this much. It'd be very easy for us to be like, well, it happened.
Spoilers, let's go.
There's some cards, and let's talk about Marcio Carvalho now. But no, this is a good problem to have. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I think is, man, this set just seems like such a huge breath of fresh air. This set doesn't feel rushed. This set doesn't feel like it left too early. I feel like Battle for Zendikar felt like it needed way more R&D time. I feel like Shadows over Innistrad felt rushed because it kind of had to be shoehorned into that Eldrazi thing. And that this is the first set from the 2-block paradigm where they've got to really embrace it. And the other half was, oh my God, thank you, whoever at Wizards. I think it was Jeremy Jarvis, but it doesn't matter. It takes a village. Whatever village of people said that we're going to make this a fun set. We're going to make this an exciting, a colorful set.
I've been so depressed, Evan.
Ugh.
Oh, every plane I've ever loved got invaded by something.
Yeah.
Tentacle shaped. It's like,
or slimy.
As long as Emrakul doesn't come out of the woodwork during Aether Revolt, I'll be happy.
Well,
right? Because the last 2 times it's been like, oops, here come the Eldrazi, and that's just that's fun. That's interesting, but it's super sad and depressing. And
that was also another critique that Mark Rosewater mentioned in A State of Design, was that there were too many Eldrazi. So hopefully we've got a little bit of a reprieve for a while.
Right. Between Nicol Bolas, who's clearly coming in Amonkhet.
Yes.
And between the fact that I will admit, I think I see some rumblings of Phyrexia going on.
Sure.
In there.
The Tezzeret is Head Judge Tezzeret, as noted in the flavor text for Larger Than Life.
Right.
Which, by the way, the first In-Sync song named card, I think.
Boys, bite your
Backstreet Boys. Apologies.
Wow.
I can
Way to
only
fail,
apologize
dude.
at this point. I have to move on to the point, which is Head Judge Tezzeret is showing up, and he's been not great. He's been corrupted once or twice.
Who let that happen, by the way? Who looked at the guy with the robotic arm and was like, you look like a good choice to judge our inventors fair?
Yeah, he invented a robot arm.
I'm
That's
just
what
saying,
I want.
It's there somewhere, but all right, so we got to keep moving. And we got to pass the salt. It's been a while since we passed the salt, to be honest. It's time to get a little salty. So, Aaron, tell me what's going on. Tell me what's getting the old sodium chloride running.
I'm losing my earbud. That's what's going on. Okay, so I was watching the Kaladesh stream like everybody else on Friday, and everybody else was really excited about the vehicles, and they were really excited about Fabricate. And I started to notice some clues or some hints that made me think of Ashiok, who's one of my favorite planeswalkers, and who I feel we have not seen enough of, and who I feel kind of got the shaft in Theros Block. Ashiok was allegedly supposed to be the big bad of Theros Block, but creative smacked that down in favor of Xenagos. And I really wish that wouldn't have happened, and I look forward to seeing more of Ashiok. And so they reveal first the Aetherborn, or the Aetherborn, who's going to be the black race, if you will. They're not doing zombies. They're not really doing anything that we've seen before. They've created this race. And the Aetherborn have the smoky tendrils around their face, sort of like Ashiok famously does. And so to me, that was a very unique trait where it was like, well, this is kind of a one-of-a-kind kind of thing here. And then they kept elaborating, and they were like, well, the Aetherborn forego sleep because they're so into experiences and they don't want to miss anything. And I was like, well, Ashiok tends to manipulate dreams and nightmares, which you might be familiar with if you don't sleep. So I'm counting all these things down, and I'm like, facial smoke, doesn't sleep, okay. Ashiok is a common Indian name. We're going to an Indian-themed realm. That's 3. They mentioned they just mention all of these clues that start to kind of build up to me, and that all led me to think that we might see Ashiok in this set. And so other people started to pick up on the connections as well. And they're also agender. When they were talking about the Aetherborn, the designers were very careful not to use gender-neutral pronouns. A couple people did slip up, but that was also very interesting that they were calling them they. That was also a very famous trait of Ashiok. Ashiok doesn't have a gender. They call them Ashiok. So all of these things were just kind of stacking up to me, and I was like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And then the next day, they completely swatted it down, and they were like, Ashiok's not Aetherborn, Ashiok's not coming, there's just no Ashiok. And I was very disappointed in that, because these are all very unique character traits that even if Ashiok's not going to be in the set, I would be okay with them saying Ashiok is an Aetherborn. We're going to bookmark this and come back to it. But to just completely poo-poo the whole idea from start to finish, it seems very much like a fail to me, where it's like, are you kidding me with this? Like, you have so many things in common. I could see if we were reaching here, but I feel like a lot of the things that I brought up are very valid points that you can't just tie. Ashiok's such a unique character where it's like, well, what are you going to do with this character? Like, this was a perfect opportunity to give a callback, and you're already calling back all these other characters. You're bringing back Tezzeret. I've heard whispers of Ajani. Why not Ashiok? This is perfect, and it was a letdown.
Yeah, I think that this is I didn't think of it. This is all completely on board with Ashiok being from Kaladesh. It just seems like an opportunity wasted.
Yeah.
That maybe even if they didn't plan on it originally, if it had been pointed out, they could have gone back and said, yeah, totally could happen. And then maybe do something with it, and then maybe not.
Yeah.
I think that it'd be interesting from a Aetherborn Planeswalker perspective, since Aetherborn Flavorfully only live about a year in length, and perhaps Ashiok, and they don't sleep. And perhaps Ashiok, as the Nightmare Weaver, Ashiok's spark. Their spark was that they became the first Aetherborn to fall asleep,
or
something like that.
I mean, there's been so many studies about how sleep deprivation affects you. And it's like, if you go through, it might have been something that everybody else was doing and they were fine, but this one particular Aetherborn might have had a really adverse reaction to it. And so they get the spark. The spark might have prolonged their life in some way. And it was a really great in for this. And
if they have a plan for Ashiok, if there is a plan somewhere in some filing cabinet for Ashiok, okay, I get it. But if there's no plan, or there isn't a real fleshed out idea of exactly what you're going to do with this character that was a unique character when it came out, it was supposed to be more hyped than it was, even though the card itself was played a lot in Standard in particular. From a flavor perspective, the character is, if you're not going to do anything with it, then why poo-poo the idea immediately? So I was totally on board with Aaron's basically fan fiction of.
Well, sure, but
on a positive note, though, I just want to end on a positive note. I do think it's fantastic that they gave us an agender race. Like, the whole race is agender. Like, think about that in terms of like the diversity, in terms of the progress, where we have a trans character. There's hints that Chandra Nissa might be doing something. We had Ashiok in the first place, but the whole race. Like, that's such a step forward, and that's glorious. I definitely want to compliment them on that.
Right, and I like the fact that, essentially the Aetherborn are also, few cards we've seen so far, kind of like hopeless romantics. Like, live fast and die young or whatever. It's so like they're just kind of longingly looking at stuff and they're just kind of appreciating every moment. It's really sweet. And if Wizards wants to retcon, it's okay. Look, guys, it's okay.
Yeah.
No hard feelings. You'd be like, you know what? We thought about it, and that's a really great idea.
That's my biggest issue is that they
totally
weren't just like, it could be, even if they were never planning.
It was smacked down.
Yeah, that was my biggest issue too.
Right, and that just feels like somebody going like, we have to put our foot down and say because I am the king of story, whatever. All right, so. Let's move on to gathering the townsfolk. Now, LSV made an announcement that he was going to do coverage full time. That he was entering the coverage bracket, as he likes to say, and joining the coverage team, he's going to do all the Pro Tours, and the World Magic Cup, and the World Championship. He is deferring his platinum status for a year.
I didn't even know you could do that.
I didn't know you could do that either.
Well,
military service?
When you're LSV, I think they're okay.
You get to do what you want?
You do what you want.
Just duck out of the draft?
Yeah, it's whatever. It's like, you know what? I'm not going to do this one, but I'll come back next year and I'll play in your Pro Tours then. And they're like, okay. So
yeah, what are you going to do? No.
I know, right? No.
Scott Vargas.
Oh, we know it now?
Do that.
Yeah. Glenwood.
And he flips the table and gets out of here. But look, one of the things that I'll note is, first of all, I mean, high five to LSV doing more coverage because he's very good at it. As a color commentator who's able to really kind of explain the different lines and say what's possible and say what someone may be thinking about, he's so good at that. He's terrific at that. So, so that's a great thing. I will note that there is nothing more permanent than a temporary tax. And there may be nothing more permanent than a temporary putting my platinum on hold. So let's just imagine a scenario where he decides to keep doing it, and he's really kind of unable to defer the platinum thing because it's kind of getting silly. My guess is Wizards may just cut him a check or something and say, here's what your platinum was worth. Just let's keep doing coverage. Because, again, to be very good at it, to be doing that, to get into that sort of mold and into that fold and say, I'm going to now step back to the other side of the curtain, the other side of the booth. Now I'm going to start playing again. I'm going to do everything I have to do when we're playing again, and then I'll kind of come back into the booth if I get knocked out of contention, blah, blah, blah. And obviously nothing against LSV. He's fantastic. But again, I feel like this is a temporary thing that will become permanent, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the way it reads to me.
Well, I mean, when you're LSV, it's like, to be fair, he doesn't need to really play anymore. It's like he's a Hall of Famer. He has a day job. He has a family. Having a family is hard work. It's very, especially a new baby. You're not sleeping very much. He's associate vice president or vice president of Channel Fireball?
He's second in charge.
Second in charge. I mean, he's got enough going on right now where he could literally just like sit back and sort of like collect the checks, if you will. Like, he doesn't need to be doing it. And so if you're in a position where you can sort of literally just do what you want to do, why the hell not? Like,
for sure.
Yeah, but the problem, I mean, I completely agree with everything you guys say, but some people right here, they have fire, right? They just have the fire that they need to compete. They need to fight. They need to play Magic games against the best in the world, and that's LSV. Like, why? You see people take huge breaks from the game and come back. Brian Kibler, Ben Stark, Huey Jensen are good examples of this. They took enormous breaks from the game and came
Kibler
back.
has yet to return from his break, though.
Kibler was just like, I'm going to go sail on this sea of money over here. Seems pretty good.
Go pitch these granola bars, girl.
Two things. One, if they offered Kibler a job commentating Pro Tours, I'm sure he'd consider it, especially long before he became Brian Kibler of Hearthstone fame. But the other factor in that is no one ever quits Magic. No one ever quits Magic. Sure. You sell your collection, except for you forgot a box of dollar rares in the bottom of your closet, so 3 years later you have something to start up your collection again.
And I quit Magic 5 times. And then you take all those dollar rares and you build Living End.
Yay. Right, there you go.
Well, look,
so
I mean...
I fully expect LSV to play again someday. I don't actually expect him to play in 2 years. Obviously, he's taking the next year off. I think he'll take the year after that off as well.
Sure.
Once Naya, his daughter, is off to, let's say, kindergarten, I think it's much more likely that we'll see LSV back on the competitive semi-grind at least.
Right, but that's going to be 5 years.
Yeah.
So that's going to take a while.
It's going to be a while, for
right.
sure, absolutely. And in the meantime, LSV is already one of the best color commentators in the game. And to have someone, and not just in terms of pure skill, but to have someone of his caliber, to be one of the top 5 all-time players in the booth, means a lot. You need to have that extra clout of, I've won a Pro Tour, I'm in the Hall of Fame.
Sure.
I have the longest winning streak and the longest losing streak in the history of the Pro Tour.
Nice.
I'm the Brett Favre, Ty Cobb of Magic the Gathering.
I have no idea who any of those gentlemen are.
Really?
Luis Scott Vargas plays Magic.
Oh, no, I knew that, but like all the other guys
Nice.
you mentioned.
I was just messing around. But anyway, you know, when you've got all the stats like he has, it adds something. You get to say, hello, welcome back to the booth. I'm host person for this match, and I am joined by literal legend of the game, Luis Scott Vargas. Like,
right.
That's an important thing to say when you're trying to attract new folks.
So we got to move on, and because we got about 10 minutes here, and we got to have a good old-fashioned red zone. Now, this is the part where I would love to have like an intro segment where it's just like, ooh, ooh, and it's like, oh, snap, it's going to happen. You know,
and in this
lights
corner,
and fog and just like pow, it's gonna be insane.
Rap sirens, pew, pew, pew.
hailing from Back Swamp, North Carolina, it's Evan Irwin.
In the red corner, Evan Irwin,
right.
and in the redder corner, Ruben Bressler.
That's
All
right, making it happen. Now look, the World Championship trophy was a thing. It was new and it was different. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you guys sort of exactly what it looks like. And basically, Wizards tried something totally different. They had a trophy. To give you some context, the trophies did not look anything sort of unique, is the way I would put it. They look like cups. You know what I mean? Big cups, big handles, big plate on the front with the brand and the and the city and the year and all that good stuff. You know, good old fashioned stuff that that you can do. So here I'm bringing it up on the screen now. So this new trophy,
great.
It's super silvery. It's got 5 plastic jewel things in the bottom, and maybe they're not plastic, maybe they're glass. I'm not sure. It's got a sort of a burning lava-esque planeswalker symbol.
Yep.
It's one of the gaudiest things I've ever seen in Magic.
Yeah. What do you have bad to say about it? Like, are you going to get to the bad part yet?
Woo! So, look, another thing that happened that actually came up, I believe it was today, was a write-up from Nick Fair Design. Now, Nick Fair Design actually designed this, and he shows, like his initial sketches that he sent to Wizards, and here's what we could possibly do. And one of them was sort of like almost like a steering wheel with mana symbols on it, for example. And this clearly, was one of them. And there's more than this trophy that I'm showing you right here. There's multiple versions that actually go down, kind of like there's like a smaller one that doesn't have like the jewels on the bottom, and then there's the even smaller one just has the flame. And that's all fine and good. And the thing is that in person, it very well may look like the coolest thing ever. But when you're photographing it the way that you're photographing it, and shiny materials are really difficult for photography anyway, it kind of comes off looking kitschy and plasticky and a little ridiculous, honestly, because the other bit I want to kind of come back to is that Wizards has developed a reputation, a sort of level of class, if you will, a level of professionalism, a level of kind of expectation of what we see in winners, what we hoist for trophies, what we find important. And just like, you're not going to have like the half of a leg and like the putter or whatever for this golf trophy, but you're like, look, it's like Tiger Woods' foot right there. And you're like, yeah, I got this like big foot trophy. It's like, you're not going to do that because there's a certain amount of, there's a certain amount of expectation that comes with those types of competitions. And I feel like there's a certain amount of expectation that comes with the World Championships. And so before I hand it off to Ruben, who's wrong, he's going to talk about trophies from other games that are aimed at
a grand jury testimony.
I'm doing it.
My opposition is going to say.
I really need to have like a gavel or something. I should be
right?
like Judge Aaron.
So just 30 more seconds here. So what Ruben's going to try to explain generally is that other trophies look very close to this, similar to this, or in this vein, and look, and if you're proving me wrong here, I'm giving you the argument. I'm giving you the argument right here, is that they are video games. Magic is not a video game. Those video games don't have 20 years worth of experience.
Is Magic trying to be an esport? I'm sorry. Did I mishear you?
And they suck at it.
I got so much time, so I'm going to get this out of the way real quick.
Go.
That's fine, I get that, but you're wrong and I hate you.
Yes!
So, this is the... I brought visual aids, if you would be so kind, Mr. Director Person, to bring up...
I brought visual hepatitis. Go.
All right, well, that is an awkward joke to make, but...
That is an awkward joke to make. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. I make really bad jokes.
In any case, if you look at the screen right now, you'll see a collection of some fabulous trophies.
All right, I want to put them on now. Here we go.
They include the Hearthstone BlizzCon trophy, which is the largest Hearthstone tournament that you can win. It's $100,000 to first place. Includes some of that opaque, plasticky glass kind of stuff happening. You've got a Duels of the Ancients trophy on there from their collegiate tournament, which also awards something like $100,000 in scholarships. You've got League of Legends, the largest game in existence right now, happening right there. And oh, by the way, you've also got a Kaijudo trophy, which I believe that set, I mean, I played in that tournament, but that, look, man, but the trophy itself is super cool because it's themed around what the set was. It was sort of like this computer race that sort of took over things. Anyway, and you've also got a piece of the mother bleeping rock from Guts, from old school Nickelodeon. Now, let me ask you a question. If I'm giving out a trophy for a game that is literally called Magic, the game is literally named Magic, do you want a cup? Do you want like a medal, like participation trophy like you would get in middle school football? Do you really want like Jimmy's got fourth in the swim meet, here's a dude on a pedestal? No, you don't. You don't want you don't want a cup. You don't want the traditional style of just a dude holding up his fist in the air. You want something that says Magic. And that is a magical trophy, in my opinion. Now, the only downside is now you can't drink out of it, right? Like the old trophies, you could like take to the bar and have them say, hey, fill this up with the biggest mojito that you possibly can. But I'm on board with these because I just love everything about this. Not only does it, and also the other thing I really liked about the trophies is there are two. There's one that permanently stays, I believe, at Wizards with the names of all of the previous winners.
Which is a big cup.
And then, which is, no, it's not.
What's
it's
a
smaller
bowl,
version.
Isn't it?
It's a smaller version of this.
Wait, they made two?
Yeah, there are two. There's like the version that has like names and stuff that stays at Wizards headquarters.
Oh,
and then there's the
now.
version that
Did you know
hand.
that my name's on a trophy at Wizards too?
I
see.
And that is named the Community Cup. So that one gets to be called a cup. When you get the Magic World Champion, the world champion of magical things, you want a magical looking trophy.
How long have we suffered and tried to explain that our game is not just a children's game?
It's not just a children's game.
That
it's the children's game.
It's look, man.
He's channeling Rosewater here.
I mean, I get it, but what I'm saying is that trophy is like it's just kind of embarrassing to show. I think it's not. We don't play a video game. Yeah, we play Magic. Yeah, there's monsters and werewolves and magical sorcerers or whatever. But like when we go to the top level, we go to like we're actual serious gamers and we know what we're doing here. And there's really smart people who do this. And it's the best game in the world, and we're going to treat it with the amount of sort of I think respect it deserves. And I think like this is just it was good intentions, but I just think it looks ridiculous.
The most popular games in the world right now. First of all, game. It's the word is all games are children's games because all games are played by children. Like that's just there aren't when you say children's game, you're insulting other video games as being for teenagers also. So like there's not that stigma in culture anymore. And gamers are professional athletes. This is digital athletics we're talking about. This is the kind of thing that we want. If Magic is trying to be a top 5 esports brand, we want to be like other top 5 esports brands, like League of Legends, like Hearthstone, like Duels of the Ancients. This is what we want. I think that we're trying too hard sometimes to be like poker or to be like other not super athletic sports, things that are shown on ESPN, and not enough like things that are shown on Twitch, like what Magic is trying to do. So I'm really behind having a creative, unique trophy that has the Planeswalker symbol, something that is unique to Magic, as its central focal point.
I want to kind of jump in and just sort of be kind of the neutral party here. I agree with both of you, actually. And I think part of the problem here is that, like you both said, is that Magic is trying to have it both ways. It's like there is all this talk of Magic being an esport, and why aren't the prize payouts like esports, and why isn't the coverage like esports? And when they start to do something like esports, whether it be the trophy or the very elaborate set, they had the headphones, they had the Paramount Theater, they had the lighting, people didn't like that. And they were like, well, why isn't this being treated more like a card game? But then when Magic behaves like a card game, you have people that call it antiquated, you have people that say it doesn't evolve, it doesn't grow, and Magic itself has been kind of straddling that line. It's been trying to please everybody, and I feel like eventually the game is going to have to choose. Like, no more of this fence sitting of we're going to be an e-game that happens to play like a card game. There needs to be a definitive no, this is what it is, and Magic needs to make that decision. The audience needs to get on board with that decision, and I don't really have a dog in the fight as to what side it needs to fall on, but it can't keep riding the fence like this. And I feel like this is one of many problems that the game has suffered from, is it's trying to do both, and it just can't do it anymore.
All I'm saying is, my final bit on this is, I respect what they were trying to do. I'm not saying that they just straight up embarrassed us or anything. I'm just saying that right. I feel it doesn't look very good from an outsider's perspective. I see what the goal was. I like that it's unique, but I feel like they took 20 years of expectation, 20 years of how this looks, how this feels, how this works, and they said, hey, we're going to give you something totally crazy different that doesn't look anything like anything ever, and that's just our new trophy with that. And that's the thing that they have the ability to do.
Sometimes evolution happens. It's like,
that's an Eldritch evolution.
They took an evolutionary leap with this trophy.
Next year we got Magic Digital Next coming out. I will move forward into the future. You can stay with Magic Digital 2008 or whatever.
Look,
and you can keep your cup-shaped trophies.
This is perfect for the Magic Digital Next whatever, when it has explosions and moving stuff and blah blah blah, because that's a video game. We don't play a video game. They're trying. All right, anyway. Let's move on, because we got to go. We got to turn the corner to the finisher. Now, the finisher this week, as we bring it up here, this past week, the giant panda was removed from the endangered species list following decades of work by conservationists. The official status of the much-loved animal has been changed from endangered to vulnerable because of a population rebound in China. Now, I'm a big fan of bears in all formats because 2 2s for 2 are just value. But I'm wondering, what is the best news for Magic players relating from the giant panda's recent recovery, Aaron?
I just want to preface this by saying that I'm also a huge fan of bears.
Yeah, I figured.
So because of their coloration and because of how painfully slow they both are, black-white control decks and standard will henceforth be referred to as Panda Go.
Nice. Ruben?
Well, from now on, regardless of format, members of China's national team for the World Magic Cup will be allowed to play up to 4 copies of Pandemonium.
Nice. All right. With pandas off the world's version of the reserve list, the scientists and researchers who have spent years trying to figure out the best way to get the notoriously difficult to breed species to have cubs can finally stop studying me through my bedroom window to figure out how to get bears to have a bunch of kids. Thank you, Ruben.
Yeah, you're welcome for that one.
Wow. Wow.
Hey, 5 cubs.
5 cubs.
Oh my God, I didn't see that coming.
Man, that one just came out of nowhere, didn't it? Man.
That's what they said.
My dear Lord.
Wow. At the very end, ladies and gentlemen, we provide the entertainment that you tune in for. Oh my God. So that ends.
Also by the way, BBD won the World Championship belt.
Yeah, for whatever reason, and this is weird, and this is going to be kind of my last point here. I felt the World Championships were completely engulfed by Kaladesh.
Just like they were this episode was completely engulfed by Kaladesh. We didn't even get to any of that. So.
I didn't get to talk anything about the World Championships. We couldn't even talk about how you won the league. You won the fantasy draft, rather. You won
I wasn't going to bring it up.
But you did, and I got second.
All I do is win,
Wow.
No it's not a pro point, but it's cute.
It's true.
Wow. All right. So either way, congratulations to Brian Braun even if we didn't get a chance to talk a lot about the event itself. Again, I think Kaladesh just swallowed
everything up. Yeah,
I don't really think it was a good idea to put the World Championships there, but either way. That ends another episode of Magic Mics. I want to thank my two co-hosts for hanging out with me. Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you.
That's right, buddy. And we're going to go to our final slide as we do. So that is another episode. We want to thank you guys for watching or listening or hanging out here to discuss all things Magic. I want to thank my co-hosts, you guys, for watching. I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Visit our website at magicmicspodcast.com that exists thanks to our Patreon supporters. Or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, do everything social that tells people that we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv/magicmics, on Twitter at magicmicscast, on Reddit at reddit.com/r/magicmics, and on Facebook at facebook.com/magicmics. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week. Same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.